We've put an explosive charge in your head. Does that sound familiar? I mean, you saw what I did to your little blonde friend at the factory, right? Oh, that was nothing. That was fun. That's fun.
Who I'm selling to is the last thing you should be concerned about. Ethan.
Villains have never really been the most prominent focus for the Mission Impossible franchise. We've had some great actors in these films. John Voight as Phelps in the original, Doug Ray Scott in the sequel, Sean Harris as Solomon Lane in some of the more recent films. All great actors, but they're never the most in-depthly characterized, but that's never an issue, because frankly, they don't really need to be. There is a bit of a formula for an MI villain though, which I think is what has managed to keep Ethan as such an engaging hero throughout each of these films. Often these villains are people who have turned their back on the IMF or the CIA. Ethan goes rogue himself often, but we know that ultimately he's working in the best interests of the IMF and the ultimate cause of protecting the people that don't even know they need protecting. Those who they never meet. And he continues to dedicate himself to that cause, will not let anyone get in his way, despite all the betrayals around him. He may go against specific orders, but he is always loyal, at the end of the day, to the IMF. And that's why he's our hero. Him and his team seem to be the only characters that can truly stay loyal. So other villains in the series have grand plans that make enough sense for them and to be worthy antagonists for Hunt. And like I say, a lot of the time it is a case of an IMF agent or CIA agent turning their back and using their secrets against them for their own gain. And that's fine. That is fine, but there's one real exception to this. A character who you can actually apply all of Ethan Hunt's traits to. A character dedicated to his own cause and remains loyal to that, no matter who or what gets in his way. And this character is brought to life by the exceptional Phillip Seymour Hoffman.
I don't have any idea what the hell's going on, do you?
It's important to note as well that Mission Impossible 3 really brought the franchise into what it is today. The original was a more grounded thriller filled with paranoia, and the sequel was John Woo doing it again, where it was over-the-top action, really glamorized stuff. And so, with two such different films, where do you take a franchise from there? And then J.J. Abrams comes in and kind of combines them a bit. It's more of an action film than a paranoia thriller, but it's much more tactical, it is much more grounded. The whole film has a great grunge feel to it, and this kind of sets the franchise up for the ultimate success it would have following this film.
I think this one's loaded. You want to find out?
So Hoffman plays the antagonist here, the threatening Owen Davian. He really doesn't have that much screen time, but he makes every second of it count. We open with a scene between him and Hunt, and we realise that that actually takes place near the end of the film in chronological order. But the fact that it shows us this now shows that Davian immediately is a worthy foil for Ethan here. To have him in such a dangerous position and without knowing the full context makes him immediately mysterious as well as threatening, as well as knowing that he's effective in some way. And that kind of builds a sense of doom throughout the rest of the film, in that you know one way or another Ethan ends up opposite him in this scene, especially because we know the strength of Hunt by this point. We know all the characteristics that I've just listed. So we learn a bit more about kind of his business after this, before we actually see him back on screen. And we get some great emotional stakes set up, as Hunt and his team are sent in to retrieve an agent called Lindsay, Ethan's protege. He trained her and brought her into the IMF, and all of that stuff. Just as they think they'd escaped, Lindsay has a bomb go off in her head, killing her in an instant. It's a scary sight, it's quite brutal, and we understand that the man involved with these bomb implants is Owen Davian. Ethan and his team go for Davian at the Vatican.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall.
And Hoffman gets to choose scenery as Davian, as well as Ethan, after he takes Davian's identity. We get a great scene of Hoffman acting opposite himself, where Ethan is trying to acquire his voice so that he can assume the identity, and then basically fake Davian's death so that they can take him away for interrogation without anyone trying to find them. But straight off the bat, there is a weird calmness to Davian. He doesn't really seem stressed to be in this situation. It really feels like he's kind of had this experience before, and that he's not really threatened by it. That causes a lot of internal doubt amongst the audience, but overall, the film and Ethan is telling us that this mission was a success. They got him out, they can question him, find out who is intending to buy the weapon that he's trying to sell, the rabbit's foot. But even when he receives this information upon waking up on the plane, Davian's calmness remains. His first sentence is his realization that it was Ethan who had assumed his identity back in the toilet. And despite everything indicating that he's lost this battle, the next thing he says is asking if Ethan has a wife and what his name is.
What the hell is your name? You have a wife, girlfriend.
He immediately starts working on Ethan mentally. Despite Ethan's pressure for Davian to reveal who the buyer is purchasing the rabbit's foot, Davian waves it off as if this conversation's only going one way. He's just not paying any attention to anything that Hunt is throwing his way. He's not biting anything, and Hunt is trying not to bite on what Davian says, but we can see on his face that he is getting in there somehow. Ironically, the fact that Davian uses bomb implants in people's brains to kill them, he is also a master at working them on that mental level, just with words.
I'm gonna ask you one more time.
What's your name?
What is a rabbit's foot?
Who are you?
And who's the buyer?
You don't have any idea what the hell's going on, do you?
This slowly turns into Davian talking in detail, threatening to hurt the woman in Ethan's life, assuming that there is one. He can mentally work Ethan to a T. I think in the first few seconds of this interaction, he figures out basically who Ethan is and figures out what buttons he's got to press to really push him to his limit. He can see every little reaction and break that down, taking him apart bit by bit. And with him knowing what buttons to push, he states what he plans to do in such a cold-hearted manner that they don't just feel like threats, but promises. You genuinely believe and fear for Ethan and Julia because of the way Hoffman delivers these lines with such confidence.
Wherever she is, I'm gonna find her and I'm gonna hurt her.
And the conversation gets more intense, and the shift in power kind of totally turns to Davian, showing no sign of empathy for life whatsoever, and committing to making sure Ethan knows now that he's interfered with his work, he's going to pay. He gets more detail, telling him how he's going to torture them both and kill them in front of each other.
I'm gonna make her bleed and cry and call out your name. Then I'm gonna kill you right in front of her.
Before confirming that he was the one who killed Lindsay in the beginning. And this causes a more violently emotional reaction from Ethan after Davian called that fun, which of course also plays into Davian's hand of learning about Ethan. Lashing out, Ethan holds Davian out of the plane, pressing him for information about the rabbit's foot, where it is, and who's buying it. But he gives no reaction whatsoever. Total silence. Despite everything we're seeing saying that Ethan's winning, that we're good, we've got the upper hand, Davian is literally seconds away from potentially being dropped and killed from this plane. It feels like Davian is in control of this scenario. It's only once Davian's brought back into the plane where he continues to refuse any actual answers, but sends a definitive warning to Ethan, revealing that he now knows his real name after hearing Luther shout it moments ago. The next big set piece sees an armed team retrieve Davian from Ethan, and knowing the man Davian is, we immediately kind of all hit panic stations because we know Julia's life is now on the line. Everything we've seen from Davian so far proves that he will stand by his promise here. So Ethan and his team put together a plan to steal the rabbit's foot, give it to Davian in trade for Julia, but then, after the fact, go back to find the rabbit's foot and retake it. We've now got a ticking timer until Davian has claimed he will kill Julia if he doesn't have the rabbit's foot in time. Which of course, Hunt manages to retrieve the weapon and goes to take it to Davian, which is where now we come back to the scene that opened the film. This torture scene is pretty brutal. It's not like gory or anything, but it just feels intense. The grunge look of the whole thing, and Davian finally does have physical control over everything going on, not just the mental aspect. Switching from his calm, calculated manner to roaring at Ethan, all in an elaborate attempt to find out that the canister is the true weapon, which in hindsight makes the performance even more interesting because he's pushing Ethan mentally to the max. That's his game. Seeing what he will do under the most extreme stress to ensure that he has the true weapon that he intends to sell. And even, once certain, he still kills Julia.
10.
And this is where I want to circle back to talking about Davian as a character in this film, because after this, it's revealed that John Musgrave has betrayed the IMF, and Davian is just the seller. But Musgrave has been working with Davian to acquire the rabbit's foot. Musgrave claims that Davian wanted to kill Ethan and Julia anyway to ensure success in his plan, and I feel like this further proves my point in how he can kind of be a bit of a mirror to Ethan in how dedicated he is to his cause. Like, it's obviously a very different cause and not a good one, but you see what I'm saying. It's actually revealed that what we just saw wasn't Julia getting shot, but someone else wearing her mask, which again kind of shows that lack of empathy and brutality that Davian has. But it is also revealed that Davian does also still have the real Julia captured for a bit of a contingency here. And so Ethan has to run to find the real Julia, where Davian activates the bomb in Ethan's head and kicks the shit out of him. We see more of his physical aggression here, as he brings true his promise from the plane that despite having confirmation that Rabbit's foot was real, he still had all of these contingencies in place for if it wasn't.
I told you she called your name. And I told you I was gonna kill you in front of her. But I'm gonna kill her in front of you.
He doesn't really need to do this, but it kind of is his best route to ensure that he reaches his course and does his job. Cruise and Hoffman are absolutely brilliant opposite each other, and all scenes when they're together are the highlights of the film. We feel the tension boiling between them both as things become more personal for Ethan, especially in the final act. Hoffman brings such fear and conviction to the character of Davian. The bluntness and ability to see through any attempts of Cruise's anger, emotional pushes and pleas. Davian only shows his anger if he thinks Hunt is doubting his power in this dynamic. Even when he lashes out louder, he brings a true sense of masterful control and internal calmness. The fact that he shot his translator after screaming and calmly telling Ethan to give him the rabbit's foot, and then can just calmly walk away. Hoffman perfectly captures every side of this character, bringing a perfectly good Mission Impossible villain to something much more, and this is why he's elevated above all the others in the franchise.